Databases, something everyone in Notion either fears or loves. But before we get into that, I want to mention that I'm planning to offer one-on-one help for anyone looking to really deep dive into Notion. So just comment the word Notion down below if that's something you would be interested in. And later on in this series, I'll show you how to write code with AI without any prior knowledge. We'll cover AI formula generation, how to really plan and edit a page. And if you clicked on this video, I've been in your shoes. Just know I want to be for you who I wish I had when I was learning. Now, into databases. So there's 4 things you want to keep in mind when you first create a database. The first thing would be the quickest way to add that database page, how to name that page, how to turn that database into a page, and then put that database page into a call out so it's safe. The quickest way to add the database page is going to be hitting /, typing in database or data, and then hitting enter. That right there is going to bring up the table and give you the ability to link a database right then and there. After adding the database, you want to come over here where it says new table, and you're going to want to give that database a name. So for our case, I'm going to name it database v1. After naming the database, you have 2 options. The first, which would be just naming the database v1. This ensures we've properly named the page and can reference back to it in the future. Option 2 is something that I tend to prefer, and that consists of adding a yield sign after your database title. And this can be very helpful when navigating through your pages, just so you can determine, from first glance, for what is the original database and for which one is a linked view. We're going to get into linked views and how to store databases in just a second. But before we do that, it would probably be a good idea to get a full understanding of what a database is and how it works. Think of the database as your computer, and the linked views are the monitors connected to it. Your monitors let you see and interact with specific parts of your computer, but they rely entirely on the computer's data to function. If the computer is gone, the monitors show nothing. Meanwhile, your computer still runs perfectly fine if you remove a monitor. The linked views are just different ways to display and work with the same core data that exists from within your database. And that brings us to the final steps of the setup process: turning your database into a page and then storing that page safely. This way, your database, which is like the computer in our analogy, remains intact and secure, while the linked views, like the monitors, can be adjusted or removed without affecting the original data at all. In order to do this, we're going to come over to the 6 dots right over here, click those, and then click Turn into Database Page. Now, a little disclaimer, at this point, I also like to click on the icon and use this one called stack squares. I feel like it just gives a really nice database vibe, and I like to keep it consistent throughout the entire workspace. After that, we're just going to come back over to those 6 squares, and we're going to drag this down to the callout box that I made earlier. And just quickly, for anyone wondering, you can insert a callout by just hitting / and then callout and then hitting enter. If you wanted to then add a toggle to that, like I do, you could just do, toggle, add a toggle list. You can name it, click to open. I can't type. This is now going to make sure that anytime we scroll down to the bottom of our pages, we'll be able to see the list of the original databases and then be able to go back up to the top and start adding linked views that way. So just for a visual example, we're going to pop over to my main dashboard. I've actually been creating this for the past 6 to 7 months. I'm extremely happy with the way it's turned out. It's actually a dashboard that speaks to you. So, anything that's going on, all your data throughout the entire dashboard will roll up. If you want to see the amount of properties in this thing, it's kind of nuts. But the great thing is you don't have to worry about them because it works. So with that being said, if I scroll into my projects page and I come all the way down here, you'll see that I actually utilize this myself. And when I click on this, I actually turn it into a page. And when you click on that page, it's going to bring up a little database page of all of, the pages included inside of the projects page and everything like that. So as you can see, I have, the database, a management database, I have the expenses, meeting notes, client feedback, and this all lives inside of this one page that when I click back will bring me back to here, which then lives inside of this toggle, which then lives inside of the call out. And that might sound a little complicated, but all you have to do is hide that and just don't delete the databases. So now that database V1 is tucked away safely, we can scroll back up to the top and start working on linked views. Now you could add a linked view by typing in slash and then linked view and clicking linked view of database. But personally, I find it easiest to just type in slash and then data and then come up here to the top right where it says add or link database. Type in whatever database you're looking for. So if we were looking for database V1, I would type in data and it's already picking up. So I would click on database V1 and right then and there, database V1 has popped up. But you also see that next to the stacked squares, there is now an arrow which is showing us that that is a linked view of the original database that we created in the beginning of the video. With that being said, you can now change this from a table to a gallery view, to a board view, to a timeline, and just know that if you accidentally ever delete it, you can always scroll down and your database will be safe in the call out box at the bottom of the page. A key tip that I want to offer is to really go in with a game plan. Think about what you're building and why. You want to have the fewest but most efficient databases possible. So outline the goals, structure them on a piece of paper, write them down in Notion before adding anything. This way you can avoid the clutter and create a really nice streamlined workflow. In addition, it's always nice to have an overview to see the big picture before diving into a lot of the details. I'll usually jot the structure down in my Notion dashboard, and if it gets really advanced, I'll use this site called Whimsical. This isn't a promotion at all, but they do offer the ability to make these little streamlined workflows. So as you can see, if I scroll over here, a little example of a leads database, you could create a little line that comes over and shows all of the properties going down. And then from there, you could take more lines and extend them outwards and show what kind of properties go off of those properties in a more advanced database. Congratulations. At this point, you've mastered Notion's database setup, database security, and how to properly add linked views. Now we'll dive into some of the key properties and how you can add and use them efficiently. Get your databases looking like this. And stay tuned because later in the video, I'll show you how to leverage Chat-GPT to auto-generate your current data and transform it into text using formulas generated by Chat-GPT itself. One disclaimer that I forgot to mention before is if you click on the table right here, you can actually hide the database title. Therefore, you can work on the database without seeing that name. On the other hand, I've also seen people show the database title and name it something as tasks. This would make it so whenever you're looking at the table, you can almost identify it immediately without having to add a heading 3 that says, tasks or something like that. And this is also a good way to view the databases if you do hide it, to put a heading 3 up top. I like to add a little bar underneath, and you can add that just by putting, 3 dashes, and then you can drag that around wherever you want. So now if we take our mouse and we hover over these 3 dots over here, that's going to open up the properties list. And as you can see, there's already one property that's auto-generated into the database, which is the name property. Other than that, if you wanted to add a new property, you would click down here where the plus is, where it says new property, and that would open up a whole list of a bunch of available options that we can work with. So if we hop back over to the database page, we can see that we're going to create a task list, add a due date property to that task list, and then formulate that due date property with Chat-GPT. So the first thing I would mainly do when creating a new database is first hide the database title. Then I usually come up to the top, and I personally like to add a heading 3. I just feel like the heading 1 and the heading 2 are a little too big. Now for that heading 3, we're going to go ahead and call that tasks. We're going to hit enter and add a little line underneath just for styling. Then we're going to scroll down, add a new page, and then we're going to name that page English Paper Due. A couple of styling things I might do to the database is come into the emojis and change this to a minus sign. I also might just come over to the table and rename that with a down arrow emoji. That kind of in my head says that, hey, this is a task list and that down arrow is pointing towards your task. It just gives my mind a nice visual of what the workflow looks like. And then from there, we can make our way over to the 3 dots on the right side. Click that, open up the properties, click new property, scroll down and select date. We're going to change the name to due date, and then we're just going to make the box a little bit bigger. Now, there's a couple ways to go back to that property in case it needs editing. The first way would be to hover over the due date in the database table, click on it, and then hit edit property at the top. That's going to bring up the property section over here on the right. Another way to do it is to go back to the 3 dots on the right side of the screen, click that, click properties, and now as you can see, a new property called due date has entered the shown in table section in our property section. Notion currently offers over 20 plus properties, and I'm not going to go through them all with you in this video, but if you do want another in-depth video on all the properties and different use cases for them, just drop the word properties in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to make a video regarding all the best use cases of all the Notion properties. So now we've created a task database, we've named a task, and then we've given ourselves a due date property, and we're going to set that due date property to be due tomorrow. So like I said before, I really like to understand the overview of how everything works before I really deep dive into the system. And that's especially true with Notion and their databases. You really want to kind of know what you're doing while you're doing it. That's not to say you shouldn't build databases when you're at the start. You just shouldn't get into really extensive things at the beginning. If anything, you should try to almost like reverse engineer something that is more complicated and see how it works from the inside out. And if you made it this far, type database in the comments below, and I'll pick one of you for a free one-on-one Notion session. This could include updating one of your pre-existing templates or just a one-on-one session to answer questions and go over things that you're currently confused about or always wanted to learn, regarding Notion. Let's jump back into the best part of the video. So right now, I'm going to be showing you how to use Chat-GPT to automatically generate exactly what you want into Notion. So with AI growing so rapidly nowadays, there's a lot of use cases that are popping up throughout the world. One that I've seemed to take a lot of interest in falls under this category called vibe coding, which I found myself doing so much, I actually decided to make it the name of my channel. With that being said, we can now take the name of our task and the due date property from our database and formulate that into ChatGPT to create a really nice text string with our data. For example, if I pasted in, can you generate me a formula in Notion that takes the property name due date and turns that into style B and red text that reads due date, then enter the date it's due. If I then click enter and give it a sec to load, it's going to come back with a formula that we can then take and copy into our database. So if I go back over to the database, I click on the 3 dots in the top right, click on properties, new property, and scroll down to where I see formula. That's going to add a new formula into our database. We're just going to go ahead and name this due date label and exit out of that. Come back over to ChatGPT, copy the code, open it up in due date label, and all you have to do is paste it. And as you can see, we have a nice red due date label formulated in text from our data that is in our current task database. So you might be wondering why adding a color to the data is a big deal, but if I hop back over to my task list, you can see that I currently have 2 tasks in the due soon category, one that's colored in red and one that's covered in orange. Now, these are currently telling me, without even the words, that I have an overdue task and I have a task that's due tomorrow. And if I were to scroll down into my calendar, you can see that if I move YouTube down to May 1st, that's going to change from orange to bolded black because it's 5 days left. But I can tell you that if I move this into the second category, this 5 days left is going to change into a non-bolded 5 days left, and it's going to change to 6 days left. So if I move that over, it's going to change into a non-bolded 6 days left. And all of these formulas work because of this Notion formula right here, which was generated with Chat-GPT, which basically says and tells the formula what to color each task depending on what its due date is. I know that after learning that for the first time, that really opened up like an endless stream of possibilities for me in Notion. And it ended up being me creating my master template that's coming out in the week called Everything OS. It's just a full system of roll ups, master views, and incredible ways that I feel like I love looking at the data. And my entire Everything OS template from ground up is built using ChatGPT and other AIs to leverage their coding in order to help me build such a powerful system that this is. Now, just a disclaimer, when dealing with ChatGPT and funneling these requests to generate formulas for you, you need to keep in consideration what time period of AI we're at and the limitations that it still does hold. So, although that prompt did get a solid response in one go, it's not always going to be like that. I can't tell you the countless amount of times that I've wanted to just slap the AI around and just be like, what are you doing? Sorry, ChatGPT. But that's when it really comes down to proper prompting and also making sure that the properties that you're inputting into the AI are spelled the exact same as they are in your database. If we were to go look at the spelling above that I gave ChatGPT, you can see that it's spelled the exact same way as it is in the database over here on the right, with two capital D's to start each word, everything else lowercase, and a space in the middle. It also helps sometimes to surround your properties with quotations just so the AI knows exactly what you're talking about. Now that you have an unfair advantage in Notion going forward, it's time to dive into three other functions that are in Notion that most users will use on a day-to-day basis. Whether you notice it or not, you'll set it one time and it will be used forever in the background. The first up is the filter, located over here, or also when you click the three dots over here. In our example, we can come over, click on filter, click on due date, and then over here on the left, we can click and sort whether we want this to be by day, week, month, or even year. So if I go ahead and click on today, you'll see that the due date label is actually today. And the reason it's not tomorrow is because I'm recording this video around midnight, and now that I look, I realize that it just changed days. But in general, think of it like a coffee filter. You pour all your data in, but only the beans you want pass through. This is especially important when conceptualizing your setup, as if I came over here and duplicated this current view, you would see that both views currently show the same filter. But if I were to go into the one that I duplicated and I were to delete the filter and change this filter to say is empty, you can see that now, because this has a due date label, it is not populating in this view, but because this view has no filter, it is now showing everything within the database. Regarding the last two functionalities of databases we're going to go over in this video, that would be sort and grouping. Sort is basically anything A to Z, anything ascending to descending or vice versa. And grouping would just be, like grouping by color, grouping by status, grouping by client. A very popular thing to do in Notion is to group by areas. So if we pop over to my projects page, you can basically see that this board view now says digital products right here. If I go over to the tab to the left, you'll just get a normal gallery view of what's going on. But by making this a board view, coming over to the three dots on the right and setting a group to areas, I'm now able to create different sections in another database that will help sort my projects in this database. And to wrap things up, if you're still finding it challenging to get the growth you want in Notion, I'm here to help. I've helped many people achieve their goals, and I'd love to support yours too. No matter your niche, content style, or how many times you've tried before, we can work together and help you thrive. If you're interested in personalized support, check out my links to see how we can collaborate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.